Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this ISG Smart Talk. Today we are joined by IPSoft, Reinfer, and NICE for a discussion on using intelligent automation in the contact center. Before we kick things off today, I want to quickly run through a few housekeeping notes with you. We are recording this webinar, and you can access the replay by visiting the same link you used to register for this live event. You can also download a PDF of today's slides in the event resources section. And please feel free to submit a question at any time during the presentation by using the Ask a Question box on the left side of your window. With that, I will hand things off to Wayne Butterfield to kick off today's ISG Smart Talk.
Great, thanks, Gillian. Thanks for the intro. Thanks for joining, everybody, and thank you to our joint presenters, who I'm really excited to introduce. For those that know me, my background has been within contact center. I spent a lot of years, both O2 and British Telecom, running contact centers, transforming customer contact, as well as working in the automation space. So to bring both contact center and automation technologies together is basically my bread and butter, and it's been a wish for a while to bring in a number of technology vendors that really can help transform from discovery through to removing contacts to improving agent performance. And so it's my pleasure to bring the guys in on today's webinar. We've got Ed from Reinfer. Ed, if you can just give us a quick intro, that'd be fantastic.
Hi everyone, my name's Ed Chalice. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Reinfer. Reinfer is a communications intelligence platform for understanding critical business communications.
Fantastic, and it will play a key role as we run through the presentation later. I think you'll really get, if you haven't heard of Reinfer before, you certainly will want to hear more about it after today. Serkan at IPSoft, quick intro, please, buddy.
Hi, thanks, Wayne, and thanks for having us today, ISG Smart Talks. So I'm Serkan Ibrahim, and I'm a director in the cognitive practice at IPSoft. We're better known for our product, Amelia, which is a conversational AI platform.
Brilliant. And last but certainly not least, Mayo from NICE, please give us an intro.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me today. My name is Mo Riva, and I'm leading our business development and partner ecosystem globally, and working for NICE in the past decade, I would say, in the automation business. And today I will be speaking a lot about one of our key solutions to transform contact center called Niva.
Brilliant. So thanks everybody. I think it's really interesting. One of the things I've really been keen to explore is vendor ecosystems and how vendors, software vendors, implementation partners can really work together. No longer is it a one solution to fix, a huge problem. Now we're seeing friendly vendors working well together in ecosystems. And I'm really excited today to talk about a specific ecosystem I think is really transformative. From an ISG perspective, I'll just give you a little bit of background. So, one of the key things that we enable our clients to move towards is the future workplace. And the future workplace covers many different technology types. It covers different ways of working. And today we're specifically going to talk about intelligent automation. We're going to talk about the cognitive workplace. We're going to talk about a number of technology types, and obviously we've been joined by three specific vendors today. For those who've seen many of the posts on LinkedIn, there's a fantastic slide at the end that I can't wait to get into the detail of. Today is very much about a collaboration, both a collaboration between ISG and our partners, but more importantly between ISG, our partners, and you, the audience. So please do feel free just to fire questions at us. The harder the better. I really want these guys to sweat with some of the questions that you were asking. So please feel free to fire questions, as Gillian said, through the platform. And I know the guys are really looking forward to answering them. Whether we answer them during the presentation or at the Q&A at the end, we'll see. If there's any questions in there and I get a chance to have a look at them, I'll certainly fire some over to the panel when I get a chance. So I think the key thing here is that we know that automation is going to play a really key role. I've had 4 or 5 conversations already with organizations who are still yet to start that journey, but are very, very keen to catch up quickly. So it's not everybody has made the start of their journey yet. However, I think everybody is now of the understanding that automation is going to play a really key role moving forward, and especially in the contact center. Now, again, there's been a LinkedIn poll that we launched over the last kind of 48 hours. There was 4 kind of areas that we saw as a challenge. There is obviously a lot more. There were 4 key areas that we really wanted to call out as common challenges in the contact center. And so we put it to LinkedIn to say, well, actually, what are the biggest? What's the one that's causing you most pain? I think from memory, we're going to start from the one that apparently is least of an issue. And that actually came in at around 14% of those responses. I think there's about 100 responses on there so far. It said that digital hasn't, the issue is that digital has not delivered the efficiency or experience benefits that you were promised. Serkan, as a software in Amelia, whose entire premise is about digitizing and automating contacts, I guess it'd be good to get your view on this particular one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you, Wayne. So we see that. I'm surprised it's not actually higher, but within a contact center environment, one of the key things that we're looking at is obviously the channel mix moving forwards and the volume of inbound calls or inquiries that are coming in through multiple channels. And although digital is obviously having an effect there, the biggest driver of this we've seen has been voice within a contact center environment, and actually finding that silver bullet to help to deal with that and to understand it, to replace it, but then to optimize the processes thereafter within your agent estate have been some of the critical challenges that we've seen. And ultimately, it's a discussion around containment versus deflection. Do you try to contain those conversations within the contact center using technology, or do you deflect them to other channels like apps or self-help websites? And that's been where a lot of the discussion has been, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to delve into how we can tackle that a little bit later on in this session. Excellent.
Second one, so challenging KPIs, and as somebody from the contact center, I have been guilty of this myself. KPIs constantly on the up, and they're not necessarily taking into account what is going on. So your targets don't fluctuate depending on your channel mix. It's a reasonably static target. That static target is something that is probably agreed upfront, whether it be an agent KPI, whether it be a customer satisfaction KPI. It doesn't necessarily take into account the fact that you may have just launched an automation initiative. You've just launched some new self-serve capability, and it's taken out some of the easier stuff. So easier usually means quicker. Quicker, usually means an easier to resolve. And therefore, that mix of taking the easy stuff out, but then leaving your KPIs as they are, often makes it even more difficult to get the same level of either satisfaction or of handling time. And so I think it's a really interesting one that the KPIs in the contact center and the challenges around those, and actually being able to understand what are the drivers that are making something go up or down, certainly at a contact level, has been certainly something that I and the businesses I've worked in have really struggled with. Inconsistencies in agent skill came out next. I guess with just over a quarter. Maya, it'd be great to just get your view on that one.
Definitely. And you'd see that when we are analyzing the contact center environment, we are seeing that in terms of the inconsistencies around the agent skills, there are kind of, I would say, four main weights that are constantly sitting on the agent's shoulders as they're working throughout their daily environment. And you would see that they're trying to constantly orchestrate what we call the four key challenges. The first one is handling multiple and numerous systems in their environment. And in one of our surveys, we identified that just in order to execute, I would say, a single business process, agents are using more than 6 to 10 different business applications on their desktop. Now, while they are doing that, we all know that they are not limited into a single business process to execute. They have a large variety of those. And when you are combining those two, the multiple systems and the numerous processes that you are executing, you are creating the information overload that how do I constantly access, get the right information, from where do I get it? A lot of constant interactions either with managers or with colleagues, I would say, and a lot of work that we are working with knowledge bases constantly. And we are trying to do all of those activities by constantly making sure that we are following the latest guidelines by the organizations or making sure that we are compliant. And all of that creates a massive challenge for the employee to eventually to do what they are supposed to do best, and is serving us, I would say, as customers. We are always focusing so much on how do we provide that exceptional customer experience, but we see that especially when we speak about millennials in those, I would say, dated type of environment, it creates a lot of inconsistencies in the way that they are executing their cases or the way that they are serving us as their end customers, I would say.
Excellent. I think, and we'll come on to that because I think it's really important. If you think about all of these different things in combination, the agent's very much at the center of it, and actually is the person who deals with the brunt of these challenges. And interestingly, or maybe not, the number one that came out was that contact centers are swimming in data, but hardly any of it's actually that useful. Ed, I guess as someone who thrives on millions of data points to make sense of, I guess this one was a really interesting one for you.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and it's great to see that that's kind of validated by the audience that took part in that survey. And, just from my kind of perspective, if you just take a step back, it's like, why do we talk to the businesses or the services in our lives? At the heart of every conversation, not just a commercial conversation, at the heart of every conversation, there's typically a kind of problem that needs to be resolved, and at the heart of that problem, it's kind of either a kind of buying problem, it's like value demand, the customer wants to procure something or get something, or it's kind of failure demand, something's gone wrong and they need to resolve it. And that is really at the heart of how you can understanding that is really at the heart of how you make your business better, improve your customer experience. And once you can take that huge amount of data, which is call recordings or emails or tickets, and synthesize it and make it valuable, you really change what sometimes is viewed as a cost center. It becomes like a center of value. It becomes almost like the center and the driver of digital transformation, because what matters more than your customers' problems, right? So it's really about totally changing the equation around every customer conversation. That's kind of how we view it.
Fantastic. Now, I think it's really interesting, hence why bringing all of these challenges together and thinking about how technology can solve them. There's not one panacea here. We're talking about a number of different challenges with a number of different solutions and getting them to work well. I think data has certainly been one that I have really struggled to get any proper meaningful insight out of historically. So kind of moving on a little bit, I just wanted to bring everybody into the ISG view of intelligent automation and the role that we see in two kind of key technology types. The first one being process discovery, the ability to use technology in order to find opportunity for improvement, opportunity for process and task elimination, opportunity for automation. all forms of automation. This area of process discovery is really ramping up right now, and even process discovery has mini ecosystems per type. I won't go into loads of detail on these because I think it's definitely worthwhile a webinar on its own. But the text analytics one I know will be very close to your heart, Ed, and the desktop analytics, Maya, from your perspective, will also be, as a capability of Neva. And again, these technologies, even though they're all lumped together under process discovery, all serve a different purpose, and they all help with uncovering opportunity for improvement, opportunity for automation. And I was actually speaking with a client yesterday, and he thinks that about 70 to 75% of the opportunities that they find as a result of process discovery are actually process improvement initiatives. He basically called it lean on steroids. He was basically saying that a 6-month lean process he was doing in about 2 to 3 weeks using technology. That's just amazing. The amount of value that you would get from 6 months worth of manual effort in just weeks using technology is transformational in itself. And then, the other side of this coin, obviously, is the intelligent automation landscape. And again, any of those who've heard me talk before will know that I very much split this into handwork and headwork. Handwork being the copying, the pasting, the movement of data from one system to another. Very much the capabilities of RPA, robotic desktop automation, assisted automation, whatever you want to call it. That's really the strength. And that's very much handwork versus headwork. You're looking, you're reading, you're understanding, you're deciding, you're communicating. So this combination of handwork and headwork working together is where you get the digital workforce. So again, just to reset the bar, we talk about intelligent automation as being two separate entities, the discovering of opportunity and the technology that you can use to help enable a level of automation. So hopefully that all makes sense. And then when we start to think about using those technologies in this trifecta effect, so I really want to kind of hone into this. We think about discover, remove, and improve, which is one of the themes of today's webinar. You can kind of see where this is going already. And as I say, for those who've seen some of the sneaky slides that we've sent out on LinkedIn recently, we're almost at the point where we'll get to describe some of these. But Ed, give me some time. Give the audience a little bit more of an insight into Reinfer. Like, what's the purpose? What's under the hood from a technology perspective, and why should people care?
Okay, great questions. Yeah. So, I mean, the purpose comes back to that why. What is the like every conversation has a problem at its heart, right? And every process has a driver, right? So, and the way that people express this naturally in a dialogue with their service partners and the companies in conversations. Those conversations in and of themselves are incredibly rich and valuable. But it's very hard to kind of aggregate and understand what all of those conversations mean holistically. You have one conversation, and often, different people have different interpretations, but you have one conversation, but then when you have 100, 1,000, 10,000, and if those are coming in over a course of a day, manually generated kind of agent kind of notes or post-call kind of MI capture just doesn't cut it. So the purpose is to leverage, state-of-the-art machine learning to understand what's going on in a conversation and the why of the conversation, how it was resolved. So if we can get kind of technology to do that heavy lifting of understanding conversations, then we can really turn, these interactions into a valuable asset for the business. So that's the purpose, right? Is to kind of drive revenue and reduce cost from every conversation. The technology, the way that that's kind of packed up is it's a piece of tech. It's SaaS technology that plugs into our clients' kind of big, high volume communication channels. And the key kind of thing that sets it apart is that it's incredibly quick to set up and train. So just in a matter of a few hours, someone who understands your business, your process, your market, your products can very quickly teach Reinfer how to interpret that data. And we call that kind of operational scalability or agility, right? That's really at the heart of this thing, because in a team, in any company, you'll have a marketing team that wants to understand all of these conversations. You'll have a process excellence team that wants to understand all the conversations. An RPA team is looking for the opportunities for automation. All of these guys need to be able to very quickly set up these models and understand and interpret the data, and that's what the platform offers.
Fantastic. I know you've had some success, an award win recently with a high street bank. I mean, tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing at Natwest.
Yeah, so Natwest is a great customer of ours, but there's in many different kind of verticals as well, like insurance, e-commerce, retail. We have great customers, but the kind of the opportunity in banking is really so many processes in banking actually start with a communication, like an email or a ticket, and almost like you can view a bank or a very large kind of enterprise business as a kind of distributed set of services with emails and tickets kind of pinging off all the work. And those processes, like so much in kind of any kind of businesses, have been evolved, right? They haven't been designed. And especially in like kind of times of like COVID, banks are often kind of busier than they've ever been now. But actually, they've had real kind of problems with, kind of their workforce being able to actually do the work. And so what Reinfer does is listens to all of those operational communications, interprets the request, the root cause driver, who it's going for, who it's going from, who it's going to, and then we can build out a very detailed picture of what are the operational pain points and what are the biggest opportunities to improve the client experience, to improve the efficiency of the organization. So that's what we do with those, larger enterprise kind of businesses.
Amazing, great. And as someone who has seen those pain points in just about every business I go in, I'm always excited when I get to hear how you're helping people find insight that they have never been able to quantify before. So thanks for that, Ed. As part of our remove, Serkan, can you kind of give us again a few minutes on I guess Amelia and the value that Amelia brings? I'd love a case study if you've got one as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Wayne. So in terms of the removal, and Ed's absolutely right, that discovery phase is critical to getting this right and making sure that you have the data so that you're targeting the right use cases in the first instance. Once you have that information, I mean, most organizations aren't different. Most telcos, if you look at their top 10 volumetric drivers, are very, very similar. If you look in an IT service desk capacity, about 30 to 40% of all of their inbound volume will be from the same free processes. But once you do have that data, being able to then remove that is critically important to, A, take the pressure off of the broader agent estate and to bring down average handle times. And with the ability of our integration bus within Amelia, we do integrate with your back-end systems, and we always strive to have the most human AI experience possible. So again, IVRs have helped in intelligent catch and dispatch, but taking that one step further to actually have an AI which can do the entire conversation flow, all the way to closing that ticket off, updating your back-end systems, whether it be your ticketing system or a CRM system, and catching that business-critical data that will allow you to make better decisions. In terms of a case study where we have worked on this at scale within the enterprise, a great example would be Telefonica in Peru, where we were able to go in there and very, very quickly discern which use cases would drive the most value for Telefonica. And we're able to eventually take out around 4.5 million calls a month on average. But when COVID-19 hit, and people couldn't get into the contact center, Amelia, or in that, or within Telefonica, as it's referred to as Aura, was the first point of call and the only person manning the phones, as it were. So we actually had peak concurrency of around 250,000 calls a day, which we were able to deal with, and had developed around 36 use cases throughout that process. And the interesting thing is that the customer abandonment rate actually decreased. So a lot of organizations have a perception that using AI could maybe turn people off, or people want to speak to other people. What we found is that that as long as you are driving it to a resolution and you're not just diverting people from one place to another, that they're happy to speak to an AI as long as their query gets resolved in a speedy manner.
Fantastic. Yeah, some scarily high numbers there. That's what the potential of this is. I mean, to be fair, scarily high that, they even get 4.5 million calls for you to be able to remove. Never mind the fact that you're actually able to deal with, 250,000 in a single day. So brilliant. Definitely a great example of removing volume. And then last, but again, no means least, and we really should have designed this so that Maya isn't always last. Maya from NICE, talk to us a little bit about Neva.
Yeah, definitely, Wayne. So it's interesting to see, because after that, indeed, we have access to the information when we are discovering, and we are learning about the way and type of engagements we have through the contact center, and potentially also removing a lot of that work with solution like was presented by IPSoft. There is still always remaining touch, which is the human touch. At a certain point in time, we may need to elevate to an agent or to speak to someone, because even for us, when we look on the customer perspective, the human touch is important to us. We want to feel that we are being served and that someone is taking care of us. Now, one of the key challenges that you will see is that when we are engaging with the organization, all of us know that it's not because I just want to say how happy I am with something. I have a challenge that I need to solve at the moment. And the faster that I will solve that challenge, the more attention I will get throughout that process, the happier potentially I would be. And this is exactly what we are trying to do with Neva, our solution, the employee personal attendant, NICE employee personal attendant, that we are sitting on the employee's desktop when the engagement has to be elevated to an agent. And as soon as the agent pick up the phone, Neva is there always waiting on his desktop to help him with the business processes executing. So you can think about the scenario, for example, when you're getting a service call, immediately as it started, Neva will have the ability either from the external channels like the IVR or from live events that are happening on your desktop. She will be able to pop up and tell you that she's identifying a set of activities that you're trying to do. Based on those activities, she will be able to guide you what would be the right next best action, or even to go through a next best offer. From there, she will be able to leverage automation to try to make the process itself way more efficient. And as you remember, when we are talking to the contact center, in many cases, when the agents are they are getting to a point when they understand your ask, they're always saying to us, let me put you for a second on hold, and we are listening to that beautiful, I would say, music time while they're doing certain checks. This is exactly the points where we shine, because ideally we want to minimize that music time to customer, focus on the conversation part, give it really the human touch, and let the machine do the work that you need it to. For example, collecting the data, consolidating it. And I would say one fantastic use case, and very much different from what we knew from, I would say, the back office type of automation or from the traditional RPA, would be that in one of the large utilities in US, we were starting to think about a business process that was opening a new service. And it applies as much as in the utility of opening a new bank account or opening and activating a new insurance that you would like to to enroll to. So for that service, immediately as the customer called, Niva was pulling up your address. She was pulling up what we call your customer 360 view and presenting it in front of the agent on the screen. So the agent, rather than navigate around, open multiple systems, he will be able to see the data in front of him and immediately start the conversation, potentially even use the authentication questions that we need to present. As soon as we have that, with just a click of a button, Niva can take that information and to start and activate the customer service. Now, the interesting part is when you're working with employees, there is one unpredictable item, I would say, which is the employee himself. Not always, and we need to keep in mind, every business process will happen in the exact same way. And this is where at NICE we offer that with Niva, we will be dynamic enough that every decision that you will make throughout the process, Niva will change dynamically to support you. So while yes, we started the process by opening that new service, all of a sudden the customer asked me as a side question if I can check something. We need to support him constantly in those cases as well. So Niva will have the ability to change the type of solution and assistance module and go ahead and support me with that case as well. So when we think about it, going back to the concept, as you mentioned, of discover, remove, and improve, the ideal is how do we get and understand all of that information, to understand all of those channels, and to understand that at a certain point it will get to the organization, what we can do in order to completely maximize the value for the agent. And just to maybe piggyback to one of the questions that I see that the audience has sent us, I see that they were asking about the value levers that we have and where do we bring that value? And every time is also being measured in the average handling time that we have to be more efficient. But it goes way beyond that. We're speaking about how do we onboard employees? How do we train them to be as efficient as they can, not only leveraging the automation piece, but truly constantly supporting them throughout the case. And another interesting point, rather than just reducing, let's speak also a little bit about increasing. What if we will be able, by augmenting the employee with that type of work, to bring new revenue? Always we were speaking about how can we really turn a contact center into a cost center that will be able to generate more sales call and to perform active sales activities, I would say. So with Niva sitting on the desktop, supporting us throughout the process, we'll be able to touch on all of those different value levers that go even beyond the average handling time.
Excellent. Brilliant. And so you can start to see the theme, discover what is the opportunity, what actually on earth is going on in the organization, what are customers asking, what are they saying? Once you kind of understand that, start to think about the removal of repetitive contacts that an AI can do instead. And then with that residual, how do you make the agents and the customer experience as good as possible through the use of assisted automation? So those are the kind of three pillars. And again, bringing those together, it's not one or the other. It's bringing all these together is really how you will start to transform, to make a significant impact of the transformation of the contact center, the experience the contact center is delivering. And so if we start to think about how do you get going? What is it that that we really need to be thinking about, and why is it that these three things in conjunction are important? If you think about one of the challenges that we spoke about, the digitization of the contact center, and you'll notice I keep obviously talking about a contact center, not a call center, which is traditionally what we would have said. One of the challenges, and I know it came forth, 14% saying that, digital hadn't quite delivered what they thought it would deliver. They realized that, you can't do 10 concurrent chats. Why? Because, well, to be honest, you might be able to do 10 at the same time, but if each of those 10 takes 10 times longer, there is no end-to-end benefit. And actually, you've just made 10 customers stay on online chat 10 times longer than maybe what they needed to. And so we're definitely starting to see maybe the promise of some of the digital channels not deliver as the efficiencies, not necessarily the experience, but the efficiencies that had been promised. As you get more channels, probably the latest one that I would say is going to be quite transformational will be WhatsApp. As a completely new channel, asynchronous messaging, very, very different to a traditional online chat, quite similar to Facebook Messenger and SMS perhaps, but potentially with an ability to encrypt end-to-end, and so maybe classed as more secure. So, and new channels have not necessarily been slow in popping their head up and asking, having customers wanting to adopt them. It started with social, it started with online chat, and that has just continued to increase. And so it's really difficult then to ensure that you have this consistent experience. And not only that, but if you've got all of these different channels, text-based, voice-based, how are you really understanding overall what it is that your customers are asking? And that's why, for me, this discover phase is just so important, because you're getting all of this noise that comes in, all of this noise through unstructured communications. And, again, in the organizations where I've worked, we have customer experience teams, we have contact analysis teams. When you're dealing with 1 million, 2 million, 3 million contacts a month, are you reviewing every one of those? No. Are your agents tagging every one of those accurately? No. Therefore, you don't really have a good understanding of what actually are the drivers that are coming in. And I guess, Ed, that is why, a re-infer type solution within this discovery phase, from a communications perspective, I guess is so important, right?
Yeah, completely. And it's not just about that kind of how much of the comms you're reviewing, but also that ability to detect like spikes in changing behavior. When there's something new, you might not have had that in your kind of taxonomy of tags back, previously. So you need to be able to very quickly understand new stuff. And then also kind of run hypotheses, so your customer experience people might have a hypothesis around what actually is driving stuff, very quickly get that feedback. Super important that, each one of those conversations is a customer investing time. And the other thing is like, what we've often found in re-infer, because we're turning a conversation to structured data, we can link that structured data of what people are saying with their sales data, their subsequent spend data, right? And what we often find is that these customers that have negative experiences or driving failure demand, they're actually sometimes the most engaged. They're some of your best customers. And so it's really like, you have to understand these guys, right? I mean, you have to understand what's going on. And if you don't, you're kind of letting the whole slide down.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. I think that's really important. You touched on one thing. This is not just about discovering today. This is about really understanding change, moving forward forever. This is not a one-off exercise. It's not one and done. This is gain an understanding, look at your historical data, understand where you have come from, and then that enables you to prove that change is creating value. Really, really important. I know certainly, I go back to my days at O2, and I remember being in a meeting and we spoke at length about if we delivered every change initiative in the contact center to remove contacts, we would have 0 customers calling in. Guess what? We still had millions of customers calling in. And so clearly there was a disconnect between what we thought was the problem and what we were trying to fix versus what was driving demand. And, I just wish that we'd had a technology like a re-infer back in those days, because it would have done all of the heavy lifting. So, we think about discover, technology versus people, really. So technology augmented by people, SME and experience is going to be really key to not only understand today, but to prove out tomorrow and prove out change. We obviously spoke about remove. Now, in this instance, we have remove, in my view, under 2 things. Remove failure demand entirely. That's one aspect. And the other one is remove the need for a person to deal with it. They're 2 separate entities here. And some of that could be an online form instead of a contact needing to be made. Don't make a customer email you in if there is a structured form that you could use. Therefore, it doesn't need to go to a person. It could go to a bot. But it could be, and certainly to the Telefonica example that Serkan went through, we removed 4.5 million contacts out of our IVR. Amazing. It's a perfect example of where removing conversations in this case out of a manned environment into a technology-led environment is going to be really, really important. Second, is there any idea on, this is certainly not everything, right? So what would you say the limitations on the whole remove piece? Like, where would you draw the line?
I think that there are always going to be use cases where you actually would prefer for your agents to deal with it. So it could be within an HR function where you have something that's particularly where that human touch would be extremely beneficial. Some organizations want anything pertaining to complaints to have that personal touch. So sort of operational questions can be automated, but we actually want to really improve the level of CX, and that is by making sure that we have availability as those queries come in. And it's really on a case-by-case basis, but anything that deals with anything quite sensitive, we still think that people are the right people to deal with those queries. AI isn't going to be the answer all the time, but there is a massive breadth of use cases within most contact centers that can be automated and probably should be automated. And by integrating that with your back-end systems, as we mentioned earlier, and I think that Mayur touched upon this as well, it's just about getting that average handling time down and being able to deal with things at machine speed, and also being able to contextualize the experience based on how your CX team wants to channel that discussion. Is it going to be through are you going to be looking at different channels for different audience segments to improve the process? So a lot of people are now looking at targeting different channels for different subsets of their users. For instance, WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger have increasingly been channels that people wanted to integrate or utilize Amelia on. But to go to its point as well, that discovery phase, I think it's so important for solutions like Reinfer and our own, that it's not just done at the beginning, but you do have a program of continual improvement and continual development that keeps on looking at those use cases. And just because it's being automated doesn't mean that that's necessarily the end of the journey. So we have a quantum analysis engine that's built into Amelia, which actually sits behind each and every conversation that's taking place. So most contact centers will only have a view on about 10% of the conversations or the contacts that are taking place. And we all know those surveys at the end of calls that most people are reticent to participate in. By using a tool that can steer those, or can at least be there in the background of discussions and is taking that information on, and we use a PAD model that we co-developed with Stanford University, you get a much richer data set to then provision your future decisions. So you're getting 100% data on the customer experience, and that allows you to build in triggers into the conversation. So if somebody is having a particularly bad experience using speaking to the AI, by all means, escalate them sooner than you would do otherwise. Just because Amelia is proven to be able to utilize that use case doesn't necessarily mean that if the user isn't having a good experience, that you shouldn't then escalate that to an agent. But then the contrast, if they are having a particularly good experience, then you can use this to either upsell or to cross-reference data in your CRM. And this is typical of telcos, where people may ask questions about their last bill. Amelia explains their data usage, and then you are able to then use this as an opportunity to upsell for the benefit of the user, cross-referencing historical usage of data packages, for instance. So this is all within the realm of possibility utilizing AI way.
Brilliant. No, that's great. And then if you think about improve, and this is probably the one that when you look at it visually, you're not quite getting. But if you think about improve here for most business cases easily is around how do we reduce total contact handling time for those residual contacts that land with an agent. And if you think about these particular bar graphs here, we have the blue and the gray. The gray is an example of the part of the conversation that has been removed or slimmed down as a result of using an assisted automation like an Eva. It's not every contact all in the same place. It's not every contact all the same amount. You're using your discovery phase. You're removing those automated contacts out of the loop, and then you're improving the residual. It's these three things in combination that are really going to positively affect the role within of your contact center. And again, we shouldn't just class improve as improve your handle time. Maya, talk to us, a couple of minutes about the other positive improvements that you can make as a result of having an assistant on your desktop. I'm already thinking compliance, scripting and making sure things are said, but I'm sure there's more.
And you would see, to be honest, if we'll connect it even for a second to the new normal that we are living at, that people are even find themselves working a lot from home, you see that it goes indeed way beyond just the handle time. Because when you think about, you mentioned compliance, it's a key component to organizations nowadays. Think about a lot of bankers and a lot of insurance companies now working from home configuration. How do you make sure that everything is being done according to the regulations? So having that personal assistant residing on the employee's computer, working with the employee, and at the same time monitoring the employee's activities. It goes back to the point that as we were discussing about the discover, remove, improve concept, it's interesting to see that if you will zoom into each one of those products, we are working in the same model even internally within those products, that even with Niva itself, we are working on, okay, let's improve the case and discover and remove from it. And those are the gray areas that we see within the presentation, for example, but then how we can improve that. And same apply also for Amelia. And you see that within each one of those, we are trying to achieve that continuous improvement mechanism that will always go to the cycle of discover, remove, and improve. But to also complement real quick about it, you would see that how much do we measure the cost of errors? There are so many errors that are being done throughout the process. A robot assistant can just, without even performing the automation, can just see what is the sequence and selections that I've done, and just with a simple prompt, tell me that I'm about to make a mistake and prevent that mistake. So what would be the cost of mistake? What would be that training time that you are investing, that in the past it was very easy, I would say, to put 20 employees in a classroom and teach them how to execute a certain case. There are no classrooms anymore. We need to be virtual, exactly like the event that we are hosting today. How you can make in this digital and virtual environment a proper employee onboarding, how you can teach them and how you can support them. And as we know, in contact centers, there is a common, I would say, process that as soon as you finished your classroom, there is a buddy or someone, they call it in a lot of organizations, the nesting phase, that you have an expert agent that is supporting you in your very first engagements. There is no nesting phase now that we work from home. So now we can use digital technologies to do that nesting phase and to be there on the computer to support you when you're taking all of your first calls.
Fantastic. No, that's great. And if you start to think about, again, the trifecta effect of all of these together, the understanding of what is happening, the ability to remove the need for certain contacts to happen, both through elimination as a result of understanding and removing failure demand, of creating this pipeline of opportunity, because you now know you have insight. You don't just have data, you have insight. I think it's so key. And then obviously this ability to improve revenue through upsell, improve average handle time, improve the experience of your employees. These three things in combination, I think, are truly transformational when they work well together. So hopefully the audience has got value out of the discussion, and I'm sure we can absolutely talk about this for hours. I know I can see some great questions coming in from the audience, which does bring us on to Q&A. I'm going to fire a really wide class as a difficult one to answer to Ed, first of all, if that's okay. What are your thoughts on the GPT-3 API release? And if you could explain what that maybe is to those that wouldn't be in the know.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So GPT-3 is an acronym for a new machine learning model, an AI model. GPT stands for like generative pre-trained transformers. So generative means that it's a model that can generate sentences and paragraphs. It can literally write, and it's pre-trained. So with this thing, it reads the way that it's learned about English or French or German, and it can also code, by the way. It can write simple scripts by just reading the entire internet. And, I've been in machine learning my whole life. It's really amazing. And if you'd shown it to me 10 years ago, my head would have exploded. Everyone should check it out. But the thing is, it's all about compute. You cannot run models like that. You can't run modern machine learning without very, very big compute that's only provided in the cloud. That's the only thing I'd say. Yeah, super interesting. Everyone should check it out.
Excellent. We've got another question here. I'm probably going to go to Maya if that's all right. So, how do you see the percentages? So, I guess this is referring back to the contact center slide. Does it change as we work towards a more work from home setup? And I guess, thinking about working from home, what does that mean with regards to automation? Opportunities, stroke challenges. Do you see a shift in the need, I guess, for automation as a result of working from home?
We do see actually an interesting change in the type of business that while we were working from an office-based environment, it's funny that, we opened the discussion today talking about those inconsistencies, but all of a sudden when the market has shifted to work from home, you have discovered that apparently in the contact center, it was quite organized. Although we were looking at it back in the days to say that it's very inconsistent, there are too many variations. All of a sudden, with that, what we call an extreme distributed approach, we've seen that actually the level of inconsistency went up significantly. And as I was touching upon about the few key important items, first, the onboarding, how do you really create a consistent way for the employees to work under a certain guideline? It's extremely challenging to do and to monitor those kind of things nowadays, in addition to the fact that how employees collaboration, it's a very difficult activity to really manage and maintain within, I would say, a stressful enough contact center environment. So we are seeing an increase in demand for the assistance automation tool, but funny enough, we are seeing the usage being transformed as well to a different purpose. So while in the past, at the early days, we were spending more or taking the extreme complicated cases and trying to redesign them in order to eliminate a lot of heavy work on the automation side of things, all of a sudden, it's much more focused on the employee himself. We need someone to support the employees, and can we leverage digital technologies to do so? So indeed, there is a very interesting change and the demand and the type of work that we are doing.
Excellent, brilliant. Quite a few other questions. Serkan, I'm going to give this one to you. Is Amelia applicable for IT service desk and IT help desk as well as the contact center?
Yeah, absolutely. So the majority of what we do is either sort of customer facing or employee facing, and the IT service desk is one where actually IPSoft have quite a lot of legacy, and Amelia has been utilized by a large number of organizations doing that. And again, to your previous question, sort of which use cases are best suited to that? If you look in most IT service desk environments, the top 3 requests will be, and not necessarily in this order, but password resets, Outlook issues, and ticket checks or chases. And one of the things that really struck me was that you've actually got more people who are chasing existing tickets than you necessarily have people logging new tickets. So that's taking a massive amount of bandwidth from your agents. And again, as you were saying, that there's sort of the handwork where you're having to log into a system like an ITSM system, like a PMC Remedy or a ServiceNow, having those sort of integrations pre-built doesn't just allow you to be able to provide that information in real time through the API, but also you're able to update the tickets from the users as you're going through. So it's actually a use case that we've dealt with on quite a few occasions, and it is certainly applicable to conversational AI and the media specifically.
Fantastic. I've got a couple of questions for you, Ed. We've got Camilla from Mallorca and John here. I guess they're both asking similar questions. Firstly, how long does it take to gather insights from Reinfer? So great to get a quick insight on that. And then from John, like how detailed are the insights provided and how are they presented? So two similar questions.
Yeah, so the first question is getting that insight is kind of almost instantaneous. The platform automatically searches all of the communications to find kind of frequently occurring expressions, like semantic expressions or issues in your kind of communication status. So you see that the first time you log in. And then with respect to detail, the key thing is that the user of Reinfer tells Reinfer how much detail they want, right? So you can have kind of a level 1 detail very, very quickly. And then if you want to zoom in on a specific issue around a specific like a product type or all of your competitors or issues with pricing, you can get as specific as you want just by setting up the platform.
Fantastic. Cool. That certainly helps. And I think, in today's world, anything close to instant is very welcome. Couple of other questions here. So Rob's talking about, can anyone share a specific business problem example and the value of the solution? I mean, let me take this as the kind of the glue that holds the trifecta together. And there are countless, right? So let's start within, again, I think I kind of touched upon this from a discovery phase. When you have millions of inbound contacts and you have a small number of people reviewing them, you are going to, at best, get a sample size that is statistically viable. And if you're treating your customers as a statistic or a statistically viable view, you really have missed the point. Using something like a Reinfer to use assisted and unassisted machine learning to scan millions of contacts, highlight patterns, and clustering together similar intent, and to be able to then do that across millions of contacts in a matter of days and weeks is groundbreaking. Hence the award wins that Reinfer clients, I guess, are getting at the moment. And having seen some of the outputs here and thinking about one particular comment, the data scientist at one of my clients, bearing in mind this guy lives with data, said he couldn't believe that 40% of the reason why their customers are making contact is so they can pay them money. Like, this is the data scientist who has access to all data, and he didn't know something that Reinfer was able to find out within a few days. So that was one great example. I guess from an Amelia perspective, we heard about Peru, and I guess the real challenge with Peru is that Peruvian Spanish is actually an extremely complex dialect. So it's not just the volume there, but also the complexity that was automated. And then again, another one of our clients making use in the contact center of NICE and being able to work hand in glove alongside Aniva to actually significantly reduce hold time. Hold time for a client, for a customer on the phone is dead time. It's also wasted time for the organization. It means, for me, hold time. If you have hold time in your business, there's two things that are happening. You're either asking for help or you're doing something. In both of those instances, assisted automation is the solution for you. And one of the questions I saw was around business value, like how do you prove, disprove, how do you show value? Certainly in one of my clients, a significant reduction in hold time proved that we had done something extremely positive on those contact types. So, there are lots of examples, and I'm conscious that we don't have time to go through them all now. But absolutely, there are countless positive examples of this all working together. Guys, thank you ever so much for the panel for joining. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. As I say, the replay will be available, and please feel free to continue firing the questions. Lots of stuff on LinkedIn around this. It'd be really great to continue the dialogue. So thank you for joining.
Thank you, Wen, and the ISG team for hosting us, I would say, and for all of the audience that joined us today.
Brilliant. And Gillian, back to you.
Great stuff.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. This does conclude our time today. We appreciate you joining this ISG Smart Talk. As mentioned, the replay of this webinar will be available at the same link you used to register for the live event. If you have any questions or would just like to get in touch with us, please contact us at www.isg-one.com. Thanks very much for listening.